Gosh, what a spooky old place. You said it. Looks like King Tut's tomb to me. It certainly does, Napoleon. When we get it tidied up a bit, well, with the tree trimmed and a roaring fire in the grate, it'll start looking more homey. The old place certainly has changed, though. I can remember as a child coming to visit Uncle Jeremiah here and playing dolls in that big bay window over there. That was before he became so eccentric and shut himself up here alone with his millions and his Oriental art collection. I just can't believe it, Aunt Emily. Only yesterday I was a naive little small town girl who'd spent all of her life, or as much of it as I can remember, in the bustling metropolis of Ashburton Falls, Massachusetts, population 746 and a half. The half, that's me, Napoleon Z. Jones, on account of Oz, only got half a brain. That is the first intelligent remark you ever made. Nonsense, Lily. I only wish most folks had as many brains as Napoleon does. Anyway, here I am spending Christmas Eve in an old castle on the Hudson River, and on top of that, I've seen Boston and New York and driven in a taxi over the George Washington Bridge. And you'll be seeing lots more places, Carol, honey, and going to college too, provided Uncle Jeremiah remembered us in his will. Did you think? Do you think he did? I don't know, dear. All I know is that 3 days ago, just 1 year after Jeremiah's death, Lawyer Flint sent me a telegram saying that according to the terms of Uncle's will, everyone whose name appears in it must spend Christmas Eve here in Woodlawn Hall, where the will is to be read tonight after dinner. Lawyer Flint asked you to get here early with your niece and two trusted family uh, retainers, me and Napoleon, so as to get the place tidied up and the tree trimmed before the others arrive. If great uncle Jeremiah asked specially for us to come and reopen the house, that must mean he left us something in the will. We mustn't count on it, Carol dear. Your uncle was as eccentric as they come, nutty as a fruit cake. Lily and Napoleon should know. They were his servants for years before his death. Since then, they've come to live with us in Ashburton Falls, even though their wages haven't always been too regular. Shucks, Miss Emily. We wouldn't leave you even if you was to pay us. Sure enough. At any rate, Carol, I wouldn't get my hopes up for the will if I were you. Uncle Jeremiah never could forgive your poor mother, my sister, for eloping and running off to Hong Kong with that no-good speculator. They said she died of a broken heart shortly after giving birth to me in Hong Kong. Your father, like the hard-hearted chiseler he was, entrusted you to an American couple he scarcely knew who are running to the States. Luckily, the couple were honest and brought me straight to your door, Aunt Emily. I was able to identify you thanks to a note your dying mother had put into a little locket hanging around your neck, entrusting you to my care. On the same chain with the locket was this funny black stone with peculiar markings on it, which I've worn ever since. I imagine it's some trinket my mother bought in a bazaar in Hong Kong. Poor dear. It's probably the only thing she had to give me. Do you feel a cold draft? Yeah. And that reminds me, did you hear a funny noise as we were approaching the door of this room? Sort of like footsteps? Come to think of it, I did. And look, that shutter is open. That seems awfully peculiar. And these fresh finger marks here in the dust on the shutter. Maybe I'd better take a look around and make sure everything's in order. Yeah, maybe you should. Now, see here, Napoleon and everybody, let's not let that spooky atmosphere of this place get on our nerves. We have more important things to do. Lily, you go on out to the kitchen and get dinner started. Yes, Miss Emily. You, Napoleon, go down cellar and chop some wood for the fireplace. Did you say down cellar? I didn't say the attic, silly. Here, take this if you're scared. And don't come back without a big armload of wood. Yes, I'll go, but it's unconstitutional. That's what it is. You can straighten up a bit in here, Carol. Open the blinds and take these moldy old sheets off the furniture. Brr, they give me the creeps. I'll try and locate the Christmas tree ornaments. I believe they used to be in that big closet on the landing upstairs. How many guests are expected, Aunt Emily? There are 5 others, besides ourselves and Lawyer Flint. Suppose they're nieces and nephews from Aunt Sabrina's side of the family. They were always a queer lot. I never had much use for them. Still, I guess we can't be too choosy tonight. I only hope it turns out to have been worth it. The trip here and all. Don't think too much about that. I can't help it, dear. Besides you and me, there's Napoleon and Lily to worry about. With what I owe them in back wages, they could get married and have a home of their own. After all, they've been engaged now for 17 years. Good gracious. Who can that be? The others weren't supposed to start arriving till around 6, and it's barely 4:30. Do you want me to go and see? No, I'll go. You fix up the place for our guests. So that's the famous Hudson River. Sure makes the Ashburton River back home look like a creek. Wow, what a view. Pine woods stretching all the way down to the shore. It's like some castle on the Rhine. Just the same, I'm glad I don't live here. There's something funny about this place. It's like a feeling of death in the air. These books must have belonged to great uncle Jeremiah. What weird titles. Secrets of the Beyond. He must know them all by now. The Egyptian Book of the Dead. This must explain all about mummies, like that one over there, how they were embalmed and then put into pyramids. That's odd. Here's a picture of a black stone with markings on it, just like the one around my neck. Let's see if I can make out what it says. The print is so fine. Great Scott, what has happened here? Carol, honey, speak to us. Oh, I never should have left her alone. Where am I? What happened? You're here with me, dear, at Uncle Jeremiah's place. Here, drink this, dear. Oh, this is Mr. Patterson, a reporter from the New York Times. John Patterson? Let's save the introductions till later. First, we must find out what happened to you just now. Why were you lying unconscious on the floor? I don't know. I was standing by the bookcase over there when all of a sudden I heard a noise behind me. Before I could turn, someone was clutching at me, trying to choke me. My poor baby. Did you get a look at the person? I tried to, but his face was covered by a mask. He kept pulling at this chain around my neck as though he wanted to get this stone my mother gave me. Then I must have fainted. That's strange. There's an empty place here in the bookcase. He must have taken the book I was reading, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It is strange. Stranger even than you think. Tell me, Carol, this stone with peculiar markings that you wear, you say your mother gave it to you? I think so, but I can't be sure. I never knew my mother. You see, I'm an orphan. Oh, I'm sorry. This is terrible. It may have been an escaped convict from Rockland County Penitentiary. Don't you think we'd better search the house at once, Mr. Patterson? No. Whoever it was has had ample opportunity to give us the slip by now. This old place is probably full of secret rooms and passageways. I suggest we sit tight and wait for him to show himself again. Meanwhile, Carol must not be left alone. Obviously, the criminal has a special interest in her. That's a good idea. You stay here with her while I phone the sheriff to find out whether any convicts have escaped from the penitentiary. Did I hear the word penitentiary? I only wish I could escape into a nice, plum penitentiary. Ours are just about all I can take of this crazy house. Yes, just about enough. Napoleon, how did you get behind the bookcase? Just as I finished chopping wood, the candle I took down fell goes out by a gust of wind. In the darkness, I started walking up some steps, and here I is. Funny thing, I could have sworn and heard somebody else moving around down there. Must have been the masked man who tried to strangle Carol. Good gracious, is you're all right. Yes, but you better get out to the kitchen and make sure that Lily is. Mr. Patterson and I will build the fire. Here, Napoleon, take this along to be on the safe side. That's true. One old battle axe deserves another. What a likable chap he is. Tell me, Carol, have you always been an orphan? Mother died in Hong Kong when I was just a baby. My father sent me back to America to be rid of me. I don't know whether he's still alive or not, and I don't much care either. Aunt Emily is the only family I've ever known. Strange. I, too, am an orphan. That's a coincidence. Tell me, how does it happen that you're here for the reading of the will? As you may know, the Jeremiah Maples collection of Oriental art is one of the finest in the Western world. There must have been rumors lately that the entire collection has been left to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the New York Times sent me here to find out if it was true. I also have another reason for wanting to be here, but I can't tell you what it is just yet. If Great Uncle Jeremiah really left his collection to the museum, then that would mean it was a wonderful present to the whole population of New York City. That's right. I can't believe he would be that generous, if from all I've heard, Jeremiah Maples was a mean old codger who detested his fellow man. Then who do you think will inherit his fortune? That's what's so puzzling. I know it won't be me, because he hated my mother. People say he had a soft spot in his heart for Aunt Emily, but he hadn't seen her for years before he died. Even Napoleon Lilly, his servants, hardly ever saw him. He used to shut himself up in that big tower at the north end of the castle. No one was ever permitted inside it, but they say he had installed some kind of laboratory there and used to perform experiments. Perhaps he was trying to discover the secrets of the ancient Egyptians. It's interesting what you say. Tell me, where is Uncle Jeremiah buried? I believe in the Homeville Cemetery, not far from here. The funeral services were held in the strictest privacy. Not one of the family was present. Why do you ask? Oh, no reason. Say, do you know I kind of like you? That's funny, I do too. I guess orphans must understand each other. Sheriff is coming right over, just as I suspected. A notorious gunman escaped from the penitentiary just this afternoon. He's known as the Professor. He's middle-aged, suave, and distinguished-looking, speaks with an Oxford accent, but he's one of the 10 worst public enemies in the country. To think he may be under this very roof at this moment. Oh, who can that be? Be careful, Aunt Emily. Don't worry, dear. It's probably the sheriff. Keep an eye on her, Mr. Patterson. A courageous gal, your Aunt Emily. Oh, I'm not worried about the killer as long as she's around. Just in case of emergency, you better take this. A gun? But I've never shot a gun in my life. Then it's time you learned. Quick, put it away, someone's coming. I was driving on a back road near here when my limousine got stuck in the snow. I saw a light through the trees and headed toward it. I must ask you all to excuse me, but isn't this the house of my old teacher and friend Jeremiah Maples? You mean you knew my great uncle? Immediately. My dear child, then you are his niece. Let me look at you. Yes, I see you have the same firm, uncompromising Maples features, belied by something elusive and twinkling in the eyes. But you speak in the past tense. Can it be, then, that my poor friend? I'm afraid so. Uncle passed on a year ago. How dreadful. I didn't know, you see. I only recently returned from a voyage of several years in the Orient. Allow me to present myself, Whitney Ambleside, professor of Oriental philosophy at the Sorbonne in Paris. This is Mr. Patterson, a reporter. Indeed. Yes. Do you have any objections? With all due respect to you, my good man, I must say that the Fourth Estate has always filled me with a feeling akin to revulsion, a malicious rabble, seeking out all that is true and noble and secret in the human heart, and deliberately presenting it in a false and disgusting light. But Mr. Patterson is with the New York Times in the archaeology department. In that case, sir, I must offer you my apologies. You are engaged in bringing the light of the ancient world to our present dark ages. A noble endeavor, provided one is careful not to burn one's hands. What do you mean? Only that if the ancients had their secrets, they intended them to remain secret. Knowledge is the property of the chosen few. Today, we have another idea, that it should benefit the masses. Democracy, we call it, but who knows? Perhaps the only way we can benefit them is by keeping certain things hushed up. That's true. Not everyone is an Einstein, after all. Thank goodness. In any case, young man, I apologize for my outburst. Obviously, there is no connection between you and the vulgar muckrackers to whom I alluded. Not at all. But we'd better be going if you want me to push your car. The snow seems to be coming down faster. I'm afraid the case is quite hopeless, my dear fellow. What I'd hoped for was to telephone for a taxi to take me to the nearest village. I dare say there's a hotel nearby where I can find a night's lodging. But of course, we wouldn't dream of turning you out into the darkness and the snow. You'll stay here with us. You are too good to an old man. Besides, if you were a friend of great uncle Jeremiah's, you may be mentioned in the will. Will? That must be one of the heirs now. I'll explain it all to you later. You youngsters keep Professor Ambleside company while I answer the door. Nonsense! They don't need to bother about an old curmudgeon like me. I'll just take my place in the chimney corner. What an interesting piece. Carol, I don't like that man's looks. I think your Aunt Emily was wrong to invite him to stay here. Nonsense, John. You're just angry because of his slighting remarks about journalists. Why, he's a charming person, so cultured and distinguished. I think Aunt Emily has a crush on him already. His description tallies exactly with that of the killer who just escaped from the penitentiary. Now you are being absurd. Just one look at Professor Ambleside should convince you he's incapable of evil. Just the same, I'm going to telephone the sheriff. This is too much of a coincidence. Are you insane? You'll just get an innocent man into trouble. It's you I'm trying to protect. I'll leave the door open while I'm in the next room. Don't hesitate to use the gun if he tries to pull a fast one. Oh, all right, but I think you're being silly. Have you found something interesting? Curious, isn't it, my dear, that a humble artisan of 2,000 years ago could outsmart modern man in all his wonderful inventions. This tiny statuette from Asia Minor could not possibly be reproduced today. Really? Oh, a copy could be made, no doubt, but the soul would be lacking. Only centuries old traditions and the loving touch of the craftsman can bequeath that to a work of art. I wish I knew more about the ancients. There's no reason why you shouldn't, my dear. I should be glad to teach you, on condition that we don't infringe on the sacred mysteries I spoke of earlier. Oh, I wouldn't want to know them. On the other hand, a young, beautiful virgin like yourself might be the perfect receptacle for such secret lore. Tell me, my dear, has your heart remained pure? I mean, have you ever experienced love for anyone other than your Aunt Emily, of course? It's funny you should ask me that. Yesterday, I'd have said no, but today I'm not so sure anymore. Meaning? I think I'm getting to that young reporter is an awful lot. He's an orphan like me. I see. Curses, I'll have to work faster than I'd planned. Well, before leaving, I shall lend you a book which I'm sure will interest you. Hiya, folks. Put it there, Unc. Some chick. Too bad I just got engaged. Yeah, well, don't forget it. You punch drunk punk. Who is this crude individual? Sorry, Major Hoople. I always forgets me own strength. I'm Rocky Van Dusen, better known as the 10th Street Tiger, Greenwich Village's gift to prize fighting. The broad is Gloria Anderson, my fiancée, well-known star of stage, screen, and burlesque. We're both distant cousins of Aunt Sabrina, Uncle Jeremiah's late wife. Welcome to Woodlawn Hall. Have you known each other long? Nah, we got engaged in the bus coming out here. The minute I saw her waiting in line at the bus terminal, I knew I'd seen her somewhere. Then she hitched up her stocking, and I recognized her, Gloria Goldilocks Anderson, one of the most titillating temptresses of our time. A devotee of the terpsichorean art, I arranged to get the seat next to hers, and before we'd passed Sneeden's Landing, I was plighting our troth with the ring I always carry for just such an emergency. How do you like that, folks? A 21-carat zircon. If anybody'd asked me this morning whether I believed in love at first sight, I'd have told him to get his marbles examined. I guess maybe the holiday season has something to do with it, plus this crazy business of the will. Tell me, are you folks all members of the family? No, just Carol and I are. Mr. John Patterson is a reporter from the Times, and Professor Ambleside is an old family friend whose car broke down near here. Where did it break down? On Highway 29 just south of Orangeburg. That's funny. We passed through there on the bus, and I didn't see nothing of no broken down car. Perhaps your powers of observation equal your superb command of English grammar. On the other hand, it happened over an hour ago in the snow, has probably camouflaged it by now. Which reminds me that I'm feeling a bit exhausted by the long trek here in the cold. I wonder if you'd all excuse me if I retired for a short nap before dinner. Of course not. I'll show you to your room and have Napoleon bring you up a hot toddy. You shouldn't fatigue yourself that way. Hey, he forgot his nightshirt. Now that Gramps is gone, I'd like you kids to join me in a toast to my unblushing bride-to-be. I see Uncle Jeremiah was thoughtful enough to leave us a bottle of his best booze at least. Here's to love at first sight and the shapeliest gams that ever trod the boards of Minsky's. I'll second that, especially the first part of the sentence. Gee, this stuff is potent. Too bad we killed the bottle. I wonder where the old goat used to hide the stuff. They say he had a laboratory in the tower at the north end of the house. Maybe he's there. Maybe there's still there. That's an idea. I think I'll just mosey up and have a look-see. Rocky, remember you're in training. Don't worry, Toots. We'll practice my wrestling technique as soon as I get back with the hooch. That's what he thinks. Well, I ain't complaining so long as he gets back. Frankly, this place is beginning to give me the heebie-jeebies. I think we should all stick together for mutual protection. This whole business about coming out here to hear the will read sounds fishy to me. Never even heard of Uncle Jeremiah until I got Lawyer Flint's letter yesterday. Gloria's right. Right just before you got here, Carol was attacked by a mysterious masked stranger. He may be one of us, for all we know. Then we should make sure that there are always at least 3 of us together at one time. Oh, there's the doorbell. Aunt Emily's upstairs with the professor. I'd better go. Be careful. Don't hesitate to defend yourself first and ask questions afterward. Well, that leaves 2 of us alone. I hope you're not scared. More chilled to the bone than scared. Wish Rocky would get back with that fire water. What the? The lights have gone off here. Here, Gloria, take this axe just in case anything happens. I'm going to try to find the fuse box. All right, but hurry. I may look like a cave woman, but I'm not too much of a hand with an axe. All alone in the dark with King Tut's mother-in-law. Well, girl, that's what you get for being mercenary. Why did I come out here anyway when I could be back at Minsky's walking down a nice warm runway, and when I think they were about to promote me to more pay and less of a costume? Of course, I wouldn't have met Rocky if I hadn't come here. Oh, why doesn't that cauliflower-eared Casanova get back here? Whew, that's more like it. What the heck's this? Hey, this looks serious. John, where are you? Yes, Gloria, what is it? Great Scott, she's vanished. That's funny. When I got to the door, there was no one there. Where's Gloria? She, stepped out of the room for a moment to powder her nose. You say there was no one at the door? No, there weren't even any tracks in the snow. Whoever rang the bell must have done so from the inside the house. But why? If it was the masked burglar, then why didn't he try to kidnap me again? We may be finding that out all too soon. Now, Carol, I want you to promise me one thing. Whatever may happen this evening, however strangely I may seem to be behaving, I want you to promise me not to lose faith in me. Agreed? Of course, John. What a funny request. I knew I could trust you. Now, I want to ask you one more favor. I want you to shut your eyes for a minute. Like this? That's right. Now, stay that way just a minute. John, dear. Carol. And you say that the gem of your collection is a piece of onyx known as the Suzascara. But just why is it so precious? I thought onyx was a semi-precious stone. Its worth, my dear Miss Maples, has nothing to do with its physical properties. Oh, I'll grant you the scarab is a lovely piece, a shimmering black stone exquisitely carved in the form of a beetle, the Egyptian symbol of life. Any museum would be glad to own it, and yet its true value is inestimable, and known only to me. Just what is so valuable about the stone, Professor Ambleside? Don't keep us all in suspense. Normally, it's a thing I prefer not to talk about. The ordinary run of human beings are apt to scoff and think me an old fogey. But I see I have a sympathetic audience. We're dying to know the secret. Are you, my child? Very well, I'll tell it to you. But you must promise not to mention it to a soul outside this room. Indeed, the consequences, both for yourselves and for me, would be most unfortunate were you to do so. Oh, we promise. Yes, of course we do. Of course, of course. Now, please get to the bottom of all this. Why all this mystery around a simple piece of stone in your scarab collection? Because, my fine young friend, the simple stone, as you call it, is the clue to a secret that has puzzled mankind for centuries. The great secret, the only secret worth knowing. Next to my scarab, the philosopher's stone itself is as worthless as a worthless pebble. What do you mean? Just this. In the days of the pharaohs, experiments were made to prolong human life. You have all seen the Egyptian mummies preserved in museums, and of which my dear late friend Jeremiah had such a superb collection. You may know. You know that the scientists of those days had discovered ways of preserving the human body which have now been forever lost in the confusing mists of time. But this was only part of their activity, the lesser part, I might add. For what good, after all, is the human body, no matter how lifelike it is, if the spark of life has gone? Just what are you getting at? Scientists today are fairly certain that the Egyptians had discovered a way of prolonging that spark, of keeping it glowing for hundreds and even thousands of years, perhaps for all eternity. It is even rumored that some men walking the earth today must first saw the light of the day beside the sluggish waters of the Nile centuries upon centuries ago. But that's impossible. Do you find it so? At any rate, this aspect of the thing is not my main concern. I'm only a humble archaeologist, not a biologist. What interests me is the historical importance of the discovery, its importance in the history of ideas of immortality. Viewed in this light, my scarab is of immense importance, for it contains the secret formula for immortality discovered by the ancient Egyptians. Gosh, has anyone ever tried putting the formula to the test? Unfortunately, it's not quite that simple. The formula itself is written in a secret language of which all trace has vanished. I myself have spent half a lifetime trying to decode it, in vain. Then how do you know that what's written on the stone is the secret of eternal life? Because the inscription on the other side of the scarab, in ordinary hieroglyphics, says so, and I have every reason to believe it's true. It also speaks of the existence of another scarab, similar to the one I own, which contains the key to the secret language in which the formula is written. I needn't bother to tell you that this second scarab has been the object of a lifelong search on my part. How do you know the scarab still exists? How do you know it hasn't been lost somewhere in the mists of time, as you say? According to the inscription in hieroglyphics, this cannot happen. The missing scarab protects itself and the person who wears it. It can belong only to someone who is pure in heart. Of course, the person who owns it has no idea of what it is or its magic powers. At the end of his life, however, he automatically passes it on to another person, pure in heart, like himself, though he has no idea of why he is doing so. In this way, the scarab, if we are to believe the inscription, has been handed down from generation to generation ever since ancient times. Sounds pretty far fetched to me. Perhaps so. In any case, I should like to find the missing scarab, decode the message, and judge for myself. Unfortunately, I have exhausted the better part of a lifetime and a large personal fortune left trying to do so. My resources, as well as my energies, are almost at an end. Can't you interest some wealthy person in the cause and get him to invest some money? Alas, no. I have long since given up trying to interest people. Everyone thinks I'm slightly potty when I mention this quest that has sapped all my forces. Even your Uncle Jeremiah was inclined to take a skeptical attitude. And you came here tonight, hoping to find Uncle Jeremiah and persuade him to change his mind. Oh, stop badgering the professor, John. He already told us his car broke down while he was driving near here. It certainly sounds like a worthy cause, all right. Perhaps you'll be finding backers for your project sooner than you realize, depending on what happens here tonight, of course. Hey, get a load of this, folks. Genuine 12-year scotch aged in the wood, and you know where I found it? In Uncle Jeremiah's laboratory. I guess the old bat wasn't as cracked as we figured. A toast to you all on the eve of this gala fashion family reunion. You too, Uncle Jerry, if you can hear me. I hope what they serve you up there is as good as what you left behind. Drop that glass, you bubble brain. Don't you realize that stuff is a deadly poison unless taken in infinitesimal quantities? Now, look, Pop, I don't know what stuff you've been taking, but have a care. Nobody deprives Rocky Van Dusen of his libation with impunity. Just what makes you so sure of yourself, Professor, after all the bottles clearly labeled Scotch? Well, you see, Jeremiah's laboratory technique was always a bit helter-skelter, and you wanted to keep all the sauce for yourself. Yeah, I see. How do you like that, honey bunch? Hey, Gloria, where did you go anyway? Oh, I forgot to tell you. While you were upstairs, she received an urgent phone call and left immediately for New York. She left word for you to call her as soon as you get back. That's strange. I didn't hear the phone ring. I didn't either. Why didn't you mention this before, John? You told me Gloria had stepped out of the reason to powder her nose. Well, she did say something about sprucing up a bit before she went back. Hey, wait a minute. There's something fishy about all this. She was in such a hurry to get back she couldn't wait for me, but she found time to powder her proboscis. You ain't being square with me, friend. I've told you all I know. At least I'm not at liberty at present to reveal anything that might. Yeah, what about that, huh? You better start revealing now and fast unless you want Santa Claus to find you hanging on the mantelpiece next to your stocking. John, if you know some secret information about Gloria's disappearance, please tell it. I can't say anything more. All I know is that she received a phone call and right after she called a taxi and left. That must be Gloria now. The snow is probably too deep for the taxi to get through. I'll get it on town. Now, aren't you boys sorry you let your nerves get the better of you? Shame on you both. I'll extend my apologies after I've seen who comes in that door. Good heavens, why, it's Lawyer Flint. And just what is so extraordinary about that? You were expecting me, weren't you? Yes, but gracious, so many things have been happening all at once. I feel a little dizzy. Perhaps someone else could explain why you're all staring at me as though I'd come back from the dead. Voice, let me ask you a question. Did you see anybody driving away from here in a taxi as you came up to the house? Of course not. The drive was completely deserted and no car could have gotten through anyway. The drifts are 2 feet deep in places. Okay, that settles your hash, Mr. Reporter. Since you won't tell us where Gloria is, maybe the cops can persuade you to talk. Keep an eye on him, folks, while I telephone. He's as slippery as they come. This is absurd. I know nothing about Gloria's whereabouts. I believe you, John, and I think Carol does. But you were the last person to see her, and there are several contradictions in your story. Will someone please tell me what's going on? After all, I am a person of some consequence here. I'll explain, Lawyer Flint. Lawyer Flint. I'm Uncle Jeremiah's grandniece Carol. I had just gone to answer the doorbell when this young man, and what is his name, pray tell? John Patterson. He's a reporter from the New York Times. What? You mean you let a reporter in here? He's from the archaeology department. Anyway, no sooner had I left the room when the lights went out. It's happened again. Eek! I felt something cold brush my arm. I did too. Where are you, Aunt Emily? Over here, dear, near the fireplace. I felt something too. Will you stop? Will you please stop shoving me? Whoever you are. Whew. I must be covered with bruises. What's this? My briefcase with the will. It's gone. Someone took it. The bulls will be right over. They're anxious to have a look at the so-called reporter. And not a moment too soon. While you were out, someone stole the will. It's too terrible. Don't move anybody. I think I have a pretty good idea where that will is. Okay, you raise your arms while I frisk you. Like fun, I will. Oh, a wiseacre. I'll knock you out first, if you want it that way. Boys, stop it. Let's talk this over calmly and disgusting. Can you be reasonable, John? That'll teach you, you young hothead. You brute, you've knocked him out cold. I had to, Carol. It was in self-defense. Don't speak to me. I hate violence and brutality. Aunt Emily is there. Any more of that eau de vie. I'll force him down his throat. You get some cold compresses. See here, everybody. I'm sorry to do this, but maybe later you'll understand why. He's got a gun. Please keep calm. I should hate to be forced to use it, but if one of you should try to stop me, even you, Carol, I should be forced to act in your common interest. Monster! Don't goad him. He's already a desperate man. You're right. I am desperate, desperate to find out what happened to Gloria and to get to the bottom of this whole ugly mess. You forced me to have behaved brutally. I only hope you may thank me later for what I. Rather a nasty looking toy young fellow. Santa Claus bring you that? Thank heavens. Be careful, that man is desperate. Oh, I don't think he'll be causing anybody any more trouble. Allow me to present myself, folks. Tom Pembroke, Aunt Sabrina's great nephew and ensign in the United States Navy. I got my notification from Lawyer Flint only yesterday, and my leave came through this morning. I rushed up from Norfolk as fast as I could. But by what train? The only train for Norfolk arrives 2 hours from now. Now, who gave you permission to talk? And who told you I took the train? As a matter of fact, I took the bus. That's a lie. The bus from Norfolk doesn't arrive in New York until after midnight. Ignore him, Mr. Pembroke. We all can never be grateful enough to you for saving our lives. Carol, this man is a dangerous fake. Can't you see he's lying? He's no more a naval officer than I am. Allow me to join my voice to the general chorus of gratitude, sir. You have delivered us from the hands of a homicidal maniac. All in the line of duty, sir. And this doesn't solve the problem of my missing briefcase with the will in it. If he took it while the lights were out, what did he do with it? Where is it? He's Samoa Callas says that he's come for the reading of the will. Well, I'll be switched. It never rains, but it pours to no, sir. Oh, Oz is coming. I's coming. Excuse me, please. We seem to be intruding on a private conversation. Not at all. I'm Miss Maples, Uncle Jeremiah's niece. May I ask your names? Of course. Forgive me oversight. Count Sergei Oblomov, the last of the Oblomovs. A Russian count. This is exact. My beloved wife, the late Countess Memi Oblomov, was of the niece of Aunt Sabrina, Uncle Jeremiah's wife. And who is this pretty creature? Miss Sulin, Eurasian daughter of former Hong Kong housekeeper of Uncle Jeremiah. You're from Hong Kong. That almost makes us sisters. I was born there, you see. Sulin's one wish to buy controlling influence. Nobody's going anywhere until that will's found. Where in tarnation are those stupid flatfoots? Days here. But don't nobody make a move. I have got you all covered. This is entirely unnecessary. It was we who summoned you here to find a missing will and a missing girl. Gloria's disappearance was most unfortunate, but perhaps the will is our most immediate concern, since it vanished in this very room 5 minutes ago and is no doubt still here. That's a ridiculous supposition. And meanwhile, a girl's life may be at stake while you stand around quibbling over a piece of paper. Who is this young whippersnapper? Never mind who I am. Your business is to find Gloria as long as you're here. Say, you ain't a-going to try to teach me my job, are you, young fella, at my age? Idiots. Obviously, this is all a clumsy maneuver to distract our attention from the missing will. But if this young man is really concerned about Gloria, there is an easy and efficacious way of putting his sincerity to the test. Let the two gentlemen of the law search everyone in the room to make sure one of us is not detaining the will. Having ascertained that the will is not among us, we then form a search party to look for Gloria. I shall be delighted to volunteer first to be frisked, as I believe you call it. Not me. You won't get me that way, Aunt Ambleside. What does he mean? It's simple, Aunt Emily. If John were innocent, he'd let the sheriff search him. Carol, how can you believe such a thing? All right, young'un. Reckon as how we better start with you. Raise your arms in the air. That's right. Dinner is served. Well, I swear, never did I see such a hungry bunch of freeloaders, such manners. Say, is you're deaf or something? Second to last call for a child. Hey, you can't count me out. I had one elbow off the floor. Let me at him. I clobbered the son of a gun. I'll get back your gunner, John L. Sullivan. The fight ain't even begun yet.